Touch the Lake. Today we have a guest who is an ardent advocate for Tibetan self-determination, raises concerns over human rights, and opposes environmental damage in Tibet resulting from China's occupation of Tibet. She is Janet Rice, a former Australian senator and a prominent Tibet supporter who served as the co-chair of the Australian All-Party Parliamentary Group for Tibet. Currently, she serves as the co-chair of the Australia Tibet Council. Let us know more about Senator Rice's Tibet advocacy work, the current status of support in Australia for Tibet, and the ways to strengthen Tibetan freedom movement in diaspora and among the Tibet supporters. Welcome to Tibettv, Senator Rice. To begin with, take us back to your first association with Tibet and the Tibetan freedom movement.
I can't remember when it was. I remember, as a young adult, knowing about Tibet. Certainly I remember the visits to Australia by His Holiness, but there was just always in my life that sense that the occupation of Tibet by the Chinese government was unjust and that Tibet was a country under occupation and that it shouldn't be like that and that the human rights of the people in Tibet mattered. And Tibet obviously is this, wonderful, almost mythical place, sort of being on the top of the world and the mountains and the vast plains. And so it really it just really got itself into my memory and stuck there.
You have been for Senator for 10 years, and you have been one of the strongest voices for Tibet in the Australian Parliament, along with the likes of Senator Warren Entsch and Senator Susan Templeman, actively working in the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Tibet. You and the other members have also worked on increasing the membership of the group. What does your experience of having been a member of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Tibet say about the significance of the parliamentary support group for Tibet in different parts of the world, in different countries?
The parliamentary support groups are a really interesting and very creative way of raising awareness and action for Tibet. We have a lot of parliamentary groups in the Australian Parliament, and they are in other parliaments around the world as well. And the really good thing about them is they bring together people from across the political spectrum. So, for example, when I was co-chair of the group, my fellow co-chairs were from the other political parties. Warren Entsch, who is a friend of mine, but his politics were very different to mine on so many things. But we knew that on Tibet we were together. And so it really does give this opportunity for people to put aside their other differences and to know that whether it's Tibet or for the other groups, where you've got this common cause that you can work together on it. And that has a lot of resonance with people, because particularly in the Australian Parliament and so many parliaments, they are so adversarial. It's always people from the various parties just aggressively attacking each other. And people sit up and take notice if there are people from different political parties working together for a common cause. So it's very powerful in that way. And I think the fact that, as I was saying before, Tibet's just got a special place in the world, that people realise that here is something that is really worth campaigning for and fighting for. You were asking earlier about my first engagement with Tibet. I remember when I first came to the Parliament, and my fellow Green Senator then, Scott Ludlam, and he actually was on the most recent, and it was now a long time ago, parliamentary delegation that actually went to China and to Tibet. And it was just a matter of fact that I wanted to learn from Scott about Tibet. And so, just knowing that here in the Parliament, here is something that you can act on and use the Parliament as a platform for speaking out. And I think in my 10 years in the Senate, it was having that opportunity as, in roles like being a co-chair of the All-Parliamentary Group, that you could have that ability to use that group and use the platform of the Parliament to speak up for justice for people. If they're in Australia, Tibetan Australians are speaking out, plus the people of Tibet and the Tibetan people in exile all around the world.
Right. You're talking about how special Tibet is for you and for many others who are standing in Australia, standing for the same cause. Why should you, a citizen of Australia, a continent so far from Tibet, and people from other parts of the world that are very far from Tibet geographically should care and be concerned about Tibet, concerned about the atrocities committed by China in Tibet. We talk about how China's growing aggression, repression inside Tibet is impacting the other countries when this repression and aggression transcend borders and geographical and legal boundaries.
I think there are a whole range of reasons. I mean, one is that we are all interconnected. We are one common humanity across the world. And so what is happening to people in Tibet, it matters to me because their welfare is connected to mine, their human rights are connected to mine. So I feel very strongly that interconnectedness and that interdependence. And so I feel it was my responsibility and a privilege to be speaking up for the rights and the well-being of people. So that's the number one, overwhelming and overarching reason why people need to care, because we don't just exist isolated, on our own and, forgetting about what happens to the rest of the world. So you have to be concerned about the welfare of fellow human beings and indeed, the welfare of all other life that we share the planet with. And then the other reason is because you look at what the aggression of China and the repression of people's human rights and what they are willing to do to the people in Tibet. And it's not just Tibet. They are occupying Tibet, illegally occupying Tibet, but they use the same sort of methods that they are using to repress people in Tibet in other actions around the world. And it might be a bit softer and sort of softer power in some countries, like in the Pacific, and where they essentially bribe countries to say, well, you're on our side, we'll give you some money, but don't speak out, don't do anything. And so that comes back to bite the rest of us, because it means that our freedom and our ability to speak up is affected. And so certainly, for the Tibetan community and indeed other diaspora communities in Australia, that transnational repression of the Chinese government threatening people to say, don't you dare speak up about what's going on in Tibet, otherwise we're going to apply, pressure to you, to your community organisations, to your family who are back home in Tibet. And so people get frightened into submission. And that's a huge issue if people then can't speak their mind. And in Australia, we think we live in a democracy where we've got freedom of speech, we can say whatever we want. But where you've got that transnational repression, that's not the case. And so it does impact all of us. And then I think the third reason is, again, for countries like Australia, China is our biggest trading partner. The whole Chinese economy is dependent upon us exporting particularly our minerals, particularly our iron ore to China. So we are inextricably linked with the Chinese people and the Chinese economy. And so it's up to us to say, well, yes, trade is good, but it should not be completely divorced from human rights. And that's one of the big things that I was always campaigning about in the Parliament, that look, I think trade is good, international trade is good, but we have to, it would be so much better if we could trust that the people we were trading with reflected the same values as us. And and knowing that we are trading with them, we've got lots of, iron ore that's probably going into developments, massive hydroelectricity dam developments in Tibet. So we are connected with that. And I feel very strongly that we should have trade that is connected with human rights. We should be having dialogue with the Chinese government and says, yep, we're happy to, export our iron ore, our rock lobsters, our wine, our wheat to you, but we want to make sure that the benefits of that trade are used responsibly. And similarly, if the result of that is the Chinese government say, oh no, we don't want to do any business with you, well, okay, that's what we would have to put up with. But I don't think that would be the case, because I know that the Chinese state relies particularly on our minerals and our iron ore. So Australia could have a much more powerful role in applying pressure on China if we chose to. But most of our governments, very sadly, don't choose to.
Right. My last question to you. Tibetans, however, do enjoy, the Tibetan freedom movement do enjoy a lot of massive support from Tibetan supporters like you, who are in legislative bodies, who are in the governments, who are among the general public as well. However, with the need to strengthen the support through increased membership of Tibetan supporters all around the world is ever more urgent with China's growing power and influence. So what do you think, from your perspective, we can strategize, we can prioritize in terms of gaining this, strengthening this support and gaining new support from people all around the world?
I think there are two key things that we just need to stress and keep on sending the message out to the broader community, which I think are very powerful. One is that trying to get really reinforcing the recognition that Tibet is a state which is under occupation, illegal occupation by the Chinese government, because then it frames everything that's going on in Tibet as not just an internal Chinese issue, it's an international issue. It's international law that needs to be brought to bear on China. So I think really, focusing on that China is under occupation is a really important one. And then I think the second big message is that Tibet, in its non-violent and peaceful approach to resolving the conflict with China, is a gift to the world. The world is in such awful state at the moment. We've got World War III breaking out with Trump and Israel bombing Iran. You've got the bomb, of course, that comes back because violence just breeds more violence. And people are just despairing that there is no hope, and they just think we're just going to end up with all that nuclear war, and it's, they feel very, very despairing. Whereas Tibet, even though we've had 70 years of occupation, the fact that there is that resolute commitment to non-violence is showing the world that there's another way. And it's something to give hope to people, that here is hope. You can resolve conflict, even if it takes time, that there is a better way of doing things and a better outcome. And I think with those sort of global sort of meta messages will really reinforce the power of the Tibetan campaign to a wider audience. And I think particularly for young people who, as I said, if you look at the state of the environment, climate, the environmental destruction, massive, the genocide going on in Palestine, the violence of the wars all over the place, they feel, what hope is there? Whereas giving them the sense that we can come together, and that's being here for these last 3 days of the Tibet International Support Groups, it's such a sense of solidarity and strength, and drawing support from people who we know are all working not just for the cause of Tibet, but working with an underlying commitment to peace and non-violence and kindness and compassion, led by the amazing the leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you for your time for this interview, and thank you for all the work you have been doing to make the voices of Tibetan freedom movement stronger. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy.
That was Senator Janet Rice from Australia, and you're watching Tibettv. Thank you.